welcome to Get Fruitful Conversations. I'm your host, Anwyn Cooper, and if you're interested in growing a passion-fueled, purpose-driven enterprise and believe that business can be a force for greater good, then this is the podcast for you. Each episode, I'll be talking with inspiring entrepreneurs and inviting them to share how they're pioneering new ways of working to create more prosperity and positive impact for people and the planet. We'll be bringing you fresh insight and practical actions to generate more income and impact through your own business. Our purpose is to give you new perspectives on how to align your vision to a bigger mission in a way that fulfills your personal potential while also generating a longer lasting legacy and more value for all. So thanks for tuning in. I'm delighted you're here to listen. Now let's get fruitful with today's conversation. So, welcome everybody, and welcome Deborah Turner, who's my guest today. Deborah runs her own company, Deborah Turner Ltd. She's also a Chartered Surveyor, providing property asset management advice to clients, and she also has a passion project, Image Consultancy, providing personal image services. Her property work is mainly with local authorities, assisting them to make best use of their property assets. She's also dedicated to supporting small businesses and is the South East Policy Lead for the Federation of Small Businesses, as well as being their National Policy Lead for Women in Business. She regularly hosts events and forums to assist small businesses and engages regularly with the local business community. So she is also co-founder of Breakthrough Women, a not-for-profit organisation hosting events focused for women at work who want to meet like-minded women and hear from real role models. And when she's not working, she's busy walking her dog, being outdoors, jogging, gardening, enjoying time with her family, and drinking good coffee and eating lots of lovely food and drinking wine. So thank you, Deborah, for joining me today. Really excited to talk to you.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
So obviously the theme of this group is all about business as a force for good. And I know that that's something that you're also really interested in and passionate about, and a lot of the different things that you're involved with all contribute to making the world a better place. So I'm just really interested to kick off by asking you a bit about what does business for good mean for you, and how does that relate to all the different things that you're involved with?
Yeah, and it's a great conversation piece, and it's just a great piece of work that you're doing, Anwyn. So, congrats on kind of raising the profile of business for good. Certainly from a personal perspective, I just see the whole use of enterprise and business as something that can, bring people together. It can, just increase that kind of community feel, both sort of locally, but also on a national level around common themes. But for me, it's very much around, businesses helping each other, but not just kind of when we think of it being in a business context. So it's very much just around helping each other. It's about sharing knowledge, sharing passion, sharing expertise, but also I think raising the profile of how business can help to change the way that we live and work and play, of course. Certainly for me, in terms of highlighting business and enterprise to young people is really important, because I think, certainly speaking from my own experience and knowing, lots of kind of young people, that if, they only get to understand or know about work from their own small environment, so I know myself growing up that it wasn't going into business itself or running your own business wasn't something that perhaps was on that kind of agenda at school.
No.
Or highlighted in your careers. So I just think, being able to use business to encourage people to think about doing different things that they might be a bit more passionate about. And as I say, for me personally, it's very much for me about sharing, using business to share what we all have learned and what we're learning every day.
Yeah, that's a really interesting take on it. Thank you. I've not really heard anyone talking about it in that way. So tell us a little bit about your business journey. Obviously, as I said from your introduction, you have lots of different interests and are involved with a number of different things. How did you get to this point in your career? And how have you kind of brought all of those different aspects into your working life over the time that you've been working?
Yeah, so I kind of followed that quite traditional, I guess, back in the 80s of getting a job, getting a career, knowing that that was kind of something that you had to do to make sure that you had this long-term vision of a career for the future. So, I went to university and basically, trained to be a chartered surveyor, which at the time, when you look back, only 2% of surveyors were women.
Wow.
And even less were women of colour. So it almost kind of initially just raised more issues than just having a career and something to kind of to work towards. But now when I look back at that, actually that's shaped exactly where I am now, because going into a male dominated environment, you kind of at the time, I believed, I had to just fit in and had to do everything like everybody else to make sure that I was successful. But of course, actually what that meant was just by blending in and just not being the real me and not being able to bring myself to work, that actually I got overlooked. I didn't get taken seriously, really, because it wasn't the real me coming to work. So it was only really once I kind of started to understand a little bit more about how I was going to get noticed without trying to hide myself, and I started to look into this world of personal branding, which at the time perhaps wasn't as well known. Like now everybody understands what a personal brand is and how a personal brand can actually really improve not just your business, but your whole life, and just understanding what's important to you and how that's sort of projected in the way that you show up, basically. So I basically took some time off work and went and trained in personal branding as a personal image consultant, which is, as we sort of talk about now, our passion project. At the time, I think, you kind of just did these things at the weekend or in the evenings, but, now they have a great name, which is lovely. It kind of doesn't feel like I'm just trying to multitask beyond my ability. It means that, it's a side hustle. It's as I say, it's a passion project. And what that enabled me to do was that while still working as a surveyor, but it meant that I started to learn about business and understand what enterprise was, and actually that by making your own choices and that being able to choose the people you worked with or the environments that you work with, about actually how much change you can affect yourself. And what it really highlighted to me at that time, and that's kind of why I think I changed my whole career progression from having a job, a 9-to-5 job, was that if I myself had struggled to achieve or reach my full potential because of the constraints I was working in, that I wouldn't really want anyone else to kind of be affected by that. And so again, it's this whole sharing your experience and sharing your knowledge with others, so that people aren't either disadvantaged or don't feel that they have to go through the same struggles or the same break down those barriers. It's like we've all got a story, we've all got kind of a background. So if we're willing to share a little bit about that, it means that other people perhaps don't have to go through those steps to reach the same positions that we're in now. So it was as part of that journey of developing this personal branding company that I thought, what, actually I could run my own business as a surveyor or as an image consultant. And it gave me that confidence to step into enterprise, to start my own business. And I'm really fortunate now that, having developed on my journey as part of that progression a really brilliant network, I was able to tap into people who were already running a successful business, or certainly were in the same sector and the same industry as me, and using that network and understanding and just getting knowledge and using kind of that mentoring element of business, which I think sometimes you perhaps don't find so much in some organizations when you are kind of trying to perhaps grow your career. That by having a mentor, it really can just kind of help you see through that kind of fog that sometimes is, you know, kind of clouds all our judgment, or it makes us feel like there are barriers in the way. So I was able to, as I say, start my own business and shape my own business, which for me was really important. As you said at the start, you know, I love running, I love going for a walk with a dog, and it's being able to actually combine all of those. And when you start your own business in a way that means that you can sort of live the life you want to, I think that for me has been the most important.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So how would you describe kind of what you're working on at the moment? What's your big goal, or something that you're working towards? Kind of what are the next steps for you, and how does the future look? What do you want to achieve next?
Well, I think my role in the FSB at the moment is kind of, I suppose, forefront. I'm in a position, I'm very, very fortunate position where my business is ticking along. It's doing everything I need it to do in terms of kind of financial stability, and my client base, I feel is in a, I've managed to get it to a strong position where I feel I've got flexibility. And so the reason that I wanted to get it to that position was so that I could do this concept of business for good. So with the Federation of Small Businesses, my real aim is to encourage more women to be visible, and more women to perhaps start or scale a business who we know that they're interested, we know that they want to, but it's just having that kind of encouragement and confidence to do so. The global pandemic has affected business, you know, dramatically, but it's disproportionately affected women. Both from a, you know, a caring perspective, whether that's for young children or for family, but also, you know, women are working predominantly in the sectors that were affected most, and so we found that women were much more likely to be furloughed. Employment levels have increased across the board, but actually the proportion of women who've been made unemployed has again grown. So I think we were starting pre-pandemic to see that gender gap not massively closed, but we were making progress. We really were. And I think the pandemic has almost pushed us backwards. And so for me, my aim and my passion and my drive at the moment is to at least get back to where we were pre-pandemic, but actually just to kind of really make sure that women's enterprise stays high on the agenda, because there are so many other issues as a result of the pandemic that are in the forefront, that people are passionate about, that people need to get involved with. What we don't want is to see that kind of hard work that's already been done disregarded, or also for it to, you know, slip off the agenda. You know, I'm passionate about the women in enterprise, but actually it's widened the work that I'm doing very much into, you know, the complete diversity agenda. So you know, it's just something that I, you know, want to encourage more people to be heard.
Yeah, so important. Absolutely. I was interested when you said it earlier about when you started your career in surveying, that only 2% of surveyors were female. Do you know if that has changed? Do you know what that statistic is now?
Yeah, so it's they say 10%, but it's something like 9.8. But again, it's just about this whole awareness piece, which is why for me it's making sure that as many people who are working in industries and sectors that normally aren't kind of dominated by women, you know, just stand up and are seen.
Yeah, and that was obviously a big part of the focus of this year's International Women's Day, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was very much around visibility. It was making sure that, you know, that the progress that we've made, we don't lose. And yeah, just encouraging more women to be seen. As I say, you know, unfortunately, as a nation in Britain, we're reluctant to kind of stand up and shout about our achievements. And I think women are even less likely to do that. But when we talk about achievements and we talk about wins, it doesn't have to be massive. You don't have to be the CEO of some great company to say, look what I've achieved. Sometimes just making sure the kids are at school on time, that you've managed to run a meeting or host a meeting. Those things, they might feel at the time quite small, but I think it's really important to recognize that we should celebrate and encourage other people to celebrate what we've done and what we've achieved in business.
Yeah, absolutely. We must celebrate all of the small wins as well as the big ones. So tell me, what do you think has been your biggest learning in business so far? Maybe about yourself, something you've learned about yourself, or just about business in general?
I think for me, it was very much around this building your network. I think when I first was thinking about starting the personal branding business, I think you have this kind of vision in your head that you can just, create. At the time, the websites weren't quite so important, but I mean, obviously now they're imperative. But you kind of think, oh, well, I'll just build a website, I'll get some business cards, and everyone that is going to, of course they're going to want me. Why wouldn't they be interested in knowing about all this thing that I'm so excited and passionate about? But for me, it was that importance of having a supportive network around me. And I think for me, because I started, I think, to do it on a part-time basis while still having a full-time job, I was really fortunate to be able to understand that business, you cannot just kind of start from zero and suddenly have a client base within a month or even a year. It takes time. No, exactly. So I slowly just kind of understood that by nurturing your existing network, by building that network, that's then the opportunity to be able to say, okay, right now I'm ready because I've built this, I've created the right environment for me to do it. And so for me, it was understanding the value of relationships and nurturing and building them, because it's so easy to meet people and not perhaps appreciate or understand their perspective and how they're viewing the world. And I think when certainly for me as a youngster, and because I was so, I think, focused around this whole hiding and not being the real me, so therefore when I met other people, I was always kind of thinking, well, is that the real them? And so I almost kind of didn't build the right and trusting relationships until I kind of understood what, as I said, talked about the personal brand, about core values and what's important to me. And once I could bring that real personality to the world of work, it was really, really much easier to understand building a relationship is so important, nurturing that relationship. And then, you have that ability then to, leverage that network when you need to.
Yeah. So would that be your top tip for other people who are starting out, or do you have any other words of wisdom to share for people who are just embarking on a new business, or people maybe who've already got a business and are just looking for some fresh inspiration, things to think about?
Yeah, I think network is really important for them. I think, make sure you do have people around you, because, business can be really lonely. And I think if you don't have the right people to talk to and to ask, you can almost feel as if you are stuck in a bit of a void. But to be fair, it's, there is this kind of whole importance around being the real you. So understanding why you want to start your business, because that is what will get you through the tough times. And if you're bringing the real you to that business, and you understand exactly the reasons why you're doing it, then I think you're much more likely to stick at it, and you're much more likely to be able to engage with clients if you're coming at it from that kind of real, true, congruent self.
So that is absolutely the key to success, isn't it? Just being yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I love
and I
that.
think it's being at peace with yourself as well. It's knowing that it's okay to be you, and we all have good points, bad points, and we are going to have good days, bad days, but it's being okay with that.
Absolutely. So where do you draw inspiration from? Have there been any, you talked a little bit about mentors earlier, but have there been any people in particular that have stood out for you, that have shone a light, that have helped you along the way? Or books that you've read, films that you've watched, or other businesses that you've seen that have inspired you in any way?
Yeah, crikey, all of the above, really. It's and I think I'm really fortunate, this whole so my grandma and my mum are really strong women and independent women, and I think they were fantastic role models for me. And I suppose at the time, again, when you're growing up, you perhaps don't recognize the importance of the role they play in that. But so that was always that kind of, I did used to think, crikey, how did my mum do it? And even now, I just think, I know for a fact that she's instrumental really in kind of my drive and my motivation, and so I'm really grateful for that. But I am also, without a doubt, I know that I couldn't do what I do now without that assistance of other women running businesses who really, it wasn't just around mentoring, it really was about sharing. And that's why for me, I'm now in a position where I have experience and knowledge. And of course, we all learn things every day. I don't claim to know everything there is about business, but I want to share what I do know because other people shared and helped me. One of your former guests, Sue Nelson, was without a doubt key in me understanding really what I needed to do to shape the business that I wanted. I think you do go through those periods where you think you can do everything, and you think that you don't need the assistance or the support. And as I say, I think Sue Nelson's a brilliant role model. She's someone who definitely, I think, is she's just inspirational. So without a doubt. But yeah, I mean, I'm constantly
went to start Breakthrough Women together.
Yes, exactly. It was I think we both recognized, I think prior to that, when Sue was kind of giving me some guidance around how I kind of shaped my business, and I think when you implement, we all kind of hear a lot of things on a daily basis, and it is that taking action, isn't it? So the fact that I did, and we were then able to start that together because we recognize the importance of providing support to women who perhaps are sometimes reluctant to ask for it. And I know that we've seen in that room when we've run events, women who have been able to reach out to perhaps more experienced business women for assistance, and I think we've tried to provide that supportive environment so that women can do that. And I believe we did, and let's hope that we will be doing the same again in October this year. But
yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm probably like most business women. I listen to lots of podcasts, I read lots of books, and it's almost like you have that information overload. But if you just take, kind of one key piece from some of those, it's great to be able to pull those pieces of info in, because your business is unique to you and you as a person are unique. So listening to someone else's advice is fantastic, but they're seeing it through different eyes. So I do tend to probably take on too much information, but I just love the fact that I like hearing different views, and like all of us, I learn something new every day, and I think all the while I'm doing that, there's so much out there to learn and understand.
So what are you keen still to learn or understand? Is there anything in particular that you're learning about at the moment, or wanting to find out more about?
Yeah, that's part of my Federation of Small Businesses policy role. So it was really interesting because I just prior to doing that role, I was so focused on the women in enterprise that you kind of, I suppose, allow other things that are going on in the outside world to kind of pass you by. And for me, I mean, just you engaging now with this Business for Good, it just really struck a nerve with me that I thought, I've probably stepped back from that, those worldwide issues that are happening, and I need to certainly engage. So my policy role with FSB has given me access to some more information around environment and sustainability. So for me, it's a massive learning curve because I know I've had my eyes shut probably for a few years on that aspect. We, FSB, are engaging with the Good Business Charter, which again are looking at how businesses operate. How can we as a business community help to help the environment and help other businesses to operate in a much more sustainable way? So for me, that's at the moment a massive focus. I'm hosting an event sometime in May, can't remember the date, where we've invited a policy expert around getting businesses to operate zero carbon, and it will just be really interesting for me to be part of that roundtable learning process. I'm not going to be the one sitting there as the expert. I'm going to be literally coming at it from a blank canvas.
Yeah, fascinating. Is that going to be an online event?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
that sounds really interesting. Fantastic. So we're going to wrap up shortly, but before we do, is there anything else that you'd particularly like to share? Anything that you want to say that we haven't already touched on, either about your entrepreneurial journey or words of wisdom or business for good?
I think really it's just leaving people with that idea that be visible, be a role model to young people, but just to other people who perhaps are thinking that they might want to do some good. Use business to do that, because there are a lot of people, as I mentioned, that are becoming unemployed or that are currently unemployed. And the concept of starting a business can be scary, but if they can see there are other people out there running a business successfully, providing the life they want with business, using that business for good for themselves, but for their local community, I just think that we can all help each other. And that, for me, it's very much about sharing. So please be visible. It's, just be the best role model that you can be.
Brilliant. That's a really great message to end on. Thank you. So before we go, if people would like to get in touch with you or find out more about your work, where can they go?
So the best place is on LinkedIn. I do use the other social platforms, but for me, LinkedIn is where my client base predominantly is, and it is just Deborah Turner on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you, whether that's about women in enterprise, whether it's about small business, about any of my businesses. But yeah, as I said right at the start, for me, my network is really important, and I love meeting new people and engaging with other businesses.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your insights today, Deborah. It's been really great to talk to you.
It's been so lovely to share things with you, Anwen. It's really great, and well done you, as I say, for really engaging in this business for good. It's fantastic.
Thank you, and thank you for all that you're doing as well. Thanks for listening in to today's Get Fruitful conversation. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, I invite you to give us a 5-star rating, leave a review, subscribe to the podcast, and tell your friends and colleagues to check it out too. This will help us reach a wider audience and make sure you don't miss out on future episodes. If you'd like to get in touch, connect with other like-minded people in business, and continue conversations about topics discussed here, then I'd love you to come and find our community online. It's free to join us. Just search for the Get Fruitful Business for Good group over on Facebook, visit my website, getfruitfulmarketing.com, or click the links in the show notes. I'd love to hear what business for good means for you. Until next time, goodbye for now.